Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special long-term capital forecast meeting this Thursday, January 28th. Due to COVID-19 and recommendations by Waterloo Regional Public Health to exercise social distancing and public gathering thresholds, Township Council meetings are currently being held electronically. Members of the public may watch this open meeting electronically by accessing the live stream on Township's YouTube page. Members of the public who were interested in speaking to the long-term capital forecast were able to register to attend the virtual meeting, or were invited to submit written comments by emailing the Clerk's Division. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and can I have approval of the agenda, please?
Certainly. So moved by Councillor Gillespie and seconded by Councillor Rolleman that Council adopt the January 28th special budget meeting Council agenda as presented. Mayor Foxton, your vote on that?
Yes.
Councillor Rolleman?
Yes.
Councillor Osner is not in attendance. Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
Okay, that carries.
Thank you. So is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof? Seeing none. For tonight's meeting, we'll be discussing the 2021 to 2030 10-year capital forecast. I'll pass things over to Ms. Stedall, Treasurer, Director of Corporate Services, who will give us an overview of what the objectives will be for this evening's meeting. Ms. Stedall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Pretty straightforward for tonight's meeting. The overview is just to run through what we have compiled in the 10-year capital plan. To date, it's been updated since August with input that has different resolutions and reports that have been passed by Council. So I'll bring you up to date on what the details are of the 10-year long-year capital forecast. And the goal, the resolution at the end would be to adopt it in principle, pending any changes. And finally, we will, at the end of the meeting, depending on whether or not there are any changes in the long-term capital that would affect the budget, if there are none, then Council can consider adopting the 2021 budget tonight. If there are changes, or if Council would like a little bit longer to consider, then we can bring it forward to February the 8th. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Stedall. So now on tonight's agenda, we have one report to address. And following the Treasurer Director of Corporate Services detailed review and subsequent Council resolution, we will call for the resolution in the report with a slight amendment. So now we'll move on to regarding report number FIN 02-2021 and colon 2021 to 2030 10-year capital forecast. The agenda notification of the meeting and the reports have been circulated, but no request to attend and be a delegate for this meeting have been received. So I'll now ask Ms. Stedall if you want to do the 10-year capital forecast, please.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So just a little bit of background on this. So this is part of our budget cycle. This is our third meeting for our budget. We had the first two, which actually reviewed the details of the operations in the capital. This is the 10-year. I think it's important for everybody to remember that it is a living document, and they will find various items in it. If we make some adjustments to one area, it'll adjust somewhere else. It has outlined all of the capital projects, and it's given, of course, the capital projects are all estimates and approved based on information that's been provided both by staff and directors, as well as input by Council. Each of the different capital items that are listed have also, there's been an estimate on how to fund each of them. And the funding comes from various sources, which I'm going to walk through. We've outlined that we've identified and prioritized the items as best as we can based on information that has been received from various sources. And the exercise tonight is to help us to assist in setting future budgets, but you'll also see in one of the columns is the 2021 budget. So those items that were already approved back in August and in previous years have moved forward, and then they have been changed a little bit, but they have been already incorporated into the budget that Council has considered at previous meetings. This information as well. It helps us going forward with not just the updating our budgets, but it also updates other reports such as asset management plan, any financing policies, and it comes from other reports as well, such as development charges and some of our other long-term plans that we already have in place, including the state of the infrastructure, our reports.
Ms. Dettel, may I interrupt for just a second? So it is noted that Councillor Osner is in the meeting, please, for the clerk to record. Thank you. Carry on, Ms. Dettel.
Okay, thank you. State of the infrastructure report for the roads as well as the bridges. The facilities reports has been included in this. There's the arena strategy. So the overall content has been formulated from a number of different areas. In the content, as we get into what the spreadsheets are, and I'm going to pull them up on my screen, and I apologize where some of the faces may disappear when I do that, but I think it might be easier to follow through. We're going to cover different sections. We're going to start with the rolling stock, then we're going to talk about equipment, and then the infrastructure, facilities, and then parks and trails. So that's just the general guideline. Nothing has changed from the last meeting that we had in August or the previous one we had a year ago. The format hasn't changed. Some of the numbers and the priorities for the projects I'm sorry. And it's one thing that has been added onto it, and we'll talk about it when we get into section G. Section G actually talks about reserve continuity, and it also has some discussion. It shows a summary of the long-term or the debt. That is because there actually is some debt projected for some of these larger projects. So I thought we would have a discussion about that. So one of the attachments that is in the financial report is and I'm just going to start to share my screen now. Okay. So this is called an annual, you can see my screen now at this point? Okay, so this is the 2019 annual repayment limit. This is the annual amount that we can actually borrow, and it's based off of the financial information return. The amount of revenue, it's like a personal return an analysis as to how much debt you can actually levy, and it's based on the amount of revenue that you bring in. So you can see that over 20 years, if we were to borrow at a 5% interest rate, we could borrow $21 million. That would be the total amount of repayment. And then the calculations are in behind. I'm not going to run through those. What I am going to do is start. So you'll see on the left-hand side here is the agenda, the breakdown. So each of the councillors were given spreadsheets, hard copies, so that you could follow through that way. And hopefully this will make it easier. But I would ask that if you do have any questions on anything, please stop me and I will try to clarify it as we walk through. And then at the end of the meeting, what I propose is that council will have, pick the major items that you really want to drill down on and have further discussion on.
Shelley, can you go from 75.5% maybe up to either 85 or 100, just so those numbers are a little bit bigger?
For sure. Yes, and this is the column that I want you to read anyway, is the right hand, the left hand. As we go out past 2029, does that help what you're seeing right now?
Can you go one step larger?
Yeah. And if you close the bookmarks, if you know where they are, you don't need them. So if you close the bookmark, we probably get a better view. There we go.
Sure. Does that work?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So this is the summary pages 1 and 2, and just 1 and 2 are the summary of all of the details in behind. So here's a roll up of the fleet. If you take a look, you'll see the administration, fire, public works, and recreation fleet all rolled up. And then each of the years starting from 2021 through to 2030. The capital costs are the first part. And then on the bottom, this is how we would fund each of the amounts. The numbers are, again, best estimates, but the numbers that in the capital, you'll find like the actual estimates, they start with the 2019 amount, and then we add 2% per year as incremental costs as we go forward. So they're based on 2019 base costs, and then as we go forward, they're incremented. The amount of the funding is based on what type of project that it is, because some funding can be applied to some accounts and others it can't. And anything, if we don't have reserves or other funding, such as here, you'll see development charges, reserves, government grants, community donations or sponsorship. Bill 124, this is the building division reserve and park trust transfers. If none of those can be applied, then the fallback is that we would levy it in taxation. So in this particular column, you'll see the 421,000 was the amount that was levied in 2020, or sorry, 2020, yes, and 464,000 is how much is projected in, or is in the 2021 budget. So that is the increase in taxation, this line that goes, follows all the way across. And I'm just showing you this section, but they're all the same. The only thing that might be different is down when we get into, so the next section is studies, equipment, and software. The next section is infrastructure and facilities, and then parks. So, sorry, when you get into facilities, you'll see that there's some additional revenues because there are some other areas that we pulled in to try and finance some of the things, for instance, insurance proceeds. So I'll get into that. At the bottom of page 2, you'll see the total expenditures for all of the capital projects in the 10-year capital. For each of the year, the total expenditures, and it matches the total funding. As I've said, we made it balanced because the balance does come from taxation. And if you see how much spending we have each year, the total at the end of the 10 years is 112,691,000 is what's projected. Okay, this number down here, the total funding from taxation, is an accrual of accumulation from each of the different subsections from A to E. So it is the difference between what is being levied in expenditures minus other funding, and this is the taxation levy, and you can see how it raises each year. Okay. I'm going to go start into the fleet. Okay, so I'm not going to go into minute detail for each of these pages because I think that you know, each of the different directors may have some comments if there is anything that comes out, or councillors may have some questions. But we will start with just quickly getting through some of the rolling stock. All of the different vehicles in each of the different departments have been reviewed intensively by the directors, and the recommendations are based on a life cycle analysis as well as just what is needed depending on the needs of the departments, the service level that we have. And so you can see by law, they've got a vehicle, building, etc., and then how it's funded. And what we've done with some of the departments, in this one in particular, is that, and most of the vehicles, is that we've built a new reserve that's started about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, to build a reserve that goes against each of the vehicles. So there's no surprise. The intent is that the tax levy will be fairly flat. So there will be no major increase over year. So you'll see this in particular, this is just administration, but you'll see it if you go down to the fire rolling stock, and you'll see the contribution to reserve is being built up on this line, but down here you'll see the taxation is flat. And the reason for that is that the service level is not going to change. We're going to need these vehicles, and if there is an increase in the fleet, generally it has been increased and charged to the first new vehicle would be charged, paid for out of development charges, and then it would increment after that. These development charge costs have been captured in the development charge study that was just recently done. And there is, some of them are 100% funded and some of them are a percentage depending on what the there's a formula that's in the back of the development charges, and I won't get into the details on that, but what you will find is that each of these pieces of equipment, this is the 2019 base price, and then depending on which year that it is actually being purchased, it'll show up throughout the year, and then the funding will be underneath. So I don't know if there's anything anybody wants to speak to in regards to the administration or perhaps the fire.
I cannot see hands, so you will have to actually speak up. I see CEO McNeely. Yeah, if you put your hand up, do the raise hand, you'll pop up onto my screen at top. CEO McNeely, and you're on mute.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to add to one component of the Treasurer's discussion, you'll see green lines under the various categories. Ms. Dettel has, for the various accounts, tried to show council what the reserve continuity would be. So each year as we add to the account or draw money out of the account to pay for, in this case, an element of rolling stock, you can start to see each year over the 10-year forecast what the reserve continuity is, reflective of the ins and out transactions in a given year or over the 10-year period. And as I said, that's applicable where we've set up these reserve accounts for all of the categories. So whether it be rolling stock or infrastructure and the like. So that green is meant to be the reserve continuity applicable to the reserve accounts that assist in funding the 10-year forecast.
So CEO McNeely, I'm going to pick Ms. Settle's brain, and so I'm going to ask her to take a column in green, like for instance, the second one that says 39,897. How was that number come to?
Okay, I'm sorry,
So
I see where we are.
Yeah, this number here, this is in Public Works on the rolling stock. The 209,897 is the current balance at the end of 20. Actually, this is 2020. So it says 2019 base price, but this is the 2020 ending balance.
Okay.
What happens is we add in the contribution to reserve, the 275, and we subtract out if there's any money that's going to be coming out of reserve, which in this particular case, this year we are funding the dump truck with the multi-modules, the 3 modules at 445. It's coming out of the reserve, and the balance then left in the reserve will be 39,897. That makes sense? So start at 209, add 275, subtract 275.
Oh, okay, we're adding 275 because we contributed that to reserve. So that's where it came, correct?
Yeah.
I've got it. Thank you so much.
Okay, and just so following with that, and just further discussion, thank you, CAO McNeely, for bringing that up. These numbers in red show up, and so that is not a good thing. When you're in finance, red is not good, but you can see we do get out of it. So there are a couple of years, in particular 2022, we actually have 2 large vehicles that need to be purchased. And so we go into a bit of a deficit with that rolling stock reserve. But we come back out of it. So we continue, you can see the increase that we've got. So we start with 275 this year going into the reserve. We were at 225 last year, and it moves up incrementally because we know that we have to build a balance up because of all of these other pieces of major equipment that come up. And down here on the left-hand side with the rolling stock, it tells you how many years it is for a replacement. So 12-year replacement for dump trucks, 15-year replacement for the rubber tire equipment, and then 8-year replacement on staff vehicles. And we try to stick to that. There are times when we may find that a vehicle is starting to cost us more, and so it might get replaced sooner. But if we find a vehicle is in really good shape and we can make an extra year get another year out of it, then we would try to do that.
So Madam Mayor, just to add one more comment to Ms. Heddle. So when you see, for example, in 22 and in 24, the reserve specific to Public Works rolling stock shows a negative value. Council may recall 2 years ago, we purchased a fire tanker. We self-borrowed because we didn't have the full amount available to us in the reserve account at that point in time. It was tracked. We repaid ourselves. So it was an internal transaction. So it allowed the vehicle to be funded. It came from broader reserve, so it didn't affect the annual levy. And then you can, okay, the page is moved, but it pays for itself back in the following year. So we were able to restore the account plus whatever had been funded internally elsewhere.
I see. So CEO McNeely, if we went by that analysis, so the $49,680, or it looks like 680,
Yep.
that's right now forecast as a deficit, which we will not actually borrow from outside, but we will borrow from one of our standard reserves to offset that and pay it back, which we've done a few times. Thank you.
Correct. Okay. So
And-
once again, it levels out our internal funding and financing. The other thing is what this doesn't account for is when we take a vehicle out of service, in other words, it's been replaced, we seek permissions from council to declare it surplus. It goes to the auction, and then the net proceeds from the auction go back into that department's rolling stock reserve. So, you know, this $444,000 truck, whatever vehicle it's replacing, we don't know today what it'll get on the market, but that proceed will go into the rolling stock reserve. So what you see is maybe $49,000 deficit in 22, could be half of that, you know, depending upon what we yield out of the trade-in of the dump truck. Okay, so you know the numbers are somewhat fluid because these are estimates on prices. We actually don't know what the rolling stock will be. One variable that's outside of all of our control, most of the heavy vehicle manufacturing or heavy truck cab and chassis come from the United States. So whether we're talking about public works or for the fire department, what we don't know from year to year is what the value of the Canadian dollar will be and the exchange rate. And so that's a variable that no one knows until you actually get to that point in time. But this model is based on our best understanding of the marketplace at this point in time, grossed up each year by 2% to account for some element of inflation.
Okay. One other thing to highlight is this number, it seems that at the end of the 10-year cycle that the reserve seems to be building up quite a bit. That's because there are other vehicles, and because of this, bringing the attention to the life cycle replacement, because we do have 12 and 8 years. So we actually have some vehicles that are going to be replaced in 2031 and 2032, but because we're only looking at the 10-year forecast, it looks like it's built up, but those amounts need to be built up to replace equipment that is going to be coming due. Okay, and then the last part of rolling stock is the recreation department, and this includes not just vehicles that are on the road, but we also have some of our the Zambonis, ice resurfacers, utility trucks, things like that. So, and then again, this is the total at the bottom of page 5, where it says the total fleet expenditures, and you can follow along. The total amount comes to $10.8 million. The total funding is the same. However, the amount that is levied by taxes, you'll see it's $464,000 in 2021, and it doesn't really, it's fairly flatlined and grows to $620,000 over in 10 years. So the utilization of and building the reserves and showing how it flattens out the tax rate is it's very clear in the rolling stock, because we know that these are equipment that we need for service. Okay, are there any questions, specific questions on any of the fleet, or shall I move on?
Please move on. And councillors, please use your hand icon. It will be, if you don't have it in the bottom right under participants, it'll be in a little circle called reactions, and it's raise hand. And then I can see that you pop right up and I see that you want to speak.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for the color quality on the PDF version. The copy that councillors have received, or the copy that you would download off of the internet would be on the website, would be much better, clearer than this. So
Blue's not very clear on mine.
yeah, it's clear on the print. I apologize. It has to do with the colors. But if you can't read something, let me know, or if you need clarification on some of these numbers. So we start with studies, equipment, and software. We've sort of taken all of the smaller items that are internal, but they're capital. And I say smaller in that they're not a vehicle or an infrastructure, but they are a huge piece of the municipality capital costs. And some of these studies and implementation of software, well, the software too, it's capital in nature because of the dollar value of it. But some of the studies are required to inform the rest of the long-term capital plan. We also put it in here because some of these studies are funded by different things such as development charges or some of the government grants. We just have an announcement for funding for the modernization grant. And the township has already received that, and it actually is funding quite a bit of the software that we have listed in here. So this is all of the departments. You'll see it includes bridges, facilities, roads, the asset management plan, which is due this year, upgrades to the IT network, stormwater management plan. So it covers a vast majority of a number of different items, pay equity, wages, economic development, development charges study update, which we just did, business retention, official plan, 5-year review, joint service delivery review with the townships. That covered 4 different items. Cemetery management software, air icehouse precinct master plan. That's a carry forward. Property management building software. That's a major item that's going to assist development services department. The traffic operations study, water services review. And then again, we've started to build a contribution to reserve so we can try again, once again, to keep this tax rate at the bottom fairly consistent so that there's no major ups and downs. Right now, we've been lucky with some of the software that we have had this modernization grant because a lot of these projects have been on the books for a number of years. And with the move towards, especially with the pandemic and the implementation of more digitization, some of these pieces of software and the upgrades and being able to work in the cloud has really become a huge driver this year. So that is and again, at the bottom, the reserve balance that is starting to build in order to fund some of these different projects. The next part of studies is the fire tools, software, and equipment. Again, it has, it's building up over time. We have had a little bit more of an increase into the equipment reserve. We still have a funding deficit in 2022, but it seems to have been mitigated with some of the finalization of some projects and some once they came in under budget. So the money goes back into the reserve or the reserve doesn't get spent. We have the public works tools, software, and equipment. So any questions on any of those, any particular items anybody wants to speak to on that page? Okay. The last part of studies, equipment, and software is the recreation, and it has all of the different items as well listed in here, including it is includes software as well as equipment. And you'll see that there is no reserve actually that has been built up here. So if there is any sale from any of the proceeds from any of the previous equipment that we had, we would put it back into reserves, but we haven't budgeted for any contribution in this area.
Ms. Detto, under 2025, the ACC ice edger and the ACC floor scrubber, if we move ahead with our plan, we will not probably need those, correct?
Correct.
So we will then extrapolate those out once we've confirmed where we're going?
Yes.
So right now, it's actually just a place marker.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's a good point. And there will be, that's exactly the point of this is fluid. And as decisions are made in those types of decisions, that's how it ends up changing. So the bottom line for the studies, equipment, and software, there is an increase in 2022, which we'll have to look a little bit more carefully at what the numbers are that are in 2022, because that is quite a substantial increase over this year. And then it'll even out a little bit more as the years go forward. So staff will go back and review some of the items in 2022 before it comes forward to the 2022 budget. So we have $3.8 million that we're planning in the next 10 years on all tools, equipment, and software. Okay. All right, so moving on to infrastructure. And this is, I apologize, small because it all fits onto one. It's hard to believe such large numbers can fit onto one screen, but they can. So infrastructure is roads and bridges for the most part. There are some other items but they're ancillary usually to the roads. So we have our annual road resurfacing at various locations, and the details of this will come forward each year. We've already brought forward, and we usually bring it in December so that there's the ability for the township to go out to markets with the request for proposal or for the tender early, so that we can get better pricing and get the project started and completed within the year. We want to make sure that we start them and complete them so that we can utilize. There's a number of items that go into the infrastructure, into this particular, the road resurfacing. It's hard to tell because there's so much funding down here, but it basically, those are paid by the aggregate reserve, the gas tax, and OCIF, which we are get an annual grant from the federal and the provincial government for that. So we utilize that each year. And then we are starting to build the infrastructure reserve, and that's going to offset any additional costs because we have some major items that are coming up in the future. There are also some items. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, if you look at 2021, it's great. I mean, our total expenditure is $2,257,176, and only $135,000 is taxation.
That's right. Pre-planning.
That is wonderful. That's amazing.
And you know, the part of it is, and you'll see over time that number, it doesn't grow too much, but we do run into a couple of difficult years that we have to take a look at what we're going to be doing. And part of it is, one of the major items to bring up is the Brant-Waterloo Road, the road reconstruction. And those numbers here in the middle of 2025 and 2026 are going to cause, even if our aggregates funding and our gas tax and OCIF funding is available, we still run into some pretty heavy numbers where we have to start pre-planning what we're going to be doing in order to fund those. So you'll see a little bit further down on this page as well, is that we start to get into some deficits in the development charges, and they are because those roads, in particular the Brant-Waterloo Road, is due to new development, and we would actually be funding it from the development charges. Okay. But we have some other items in here. So we have, it doesn't just include the road reconstruction. This includes the engineering design. We've accounted for that for each of the various different projects going forward. Sidewalks are in here as well. LED streetlight conversion, the storm drains, and bike lane study. So it's all projects that are ancillary to our public works infrastructure. Okay. I don't know if there's any questions on that. You can see there's some additional reserves that have started to be built up over time. So we had our sidewalks reserve, we have our streetlight reserve, as well as funding from the development charges. And we will talk a bit more about this, the red that gets into development charges when we get to there's a continuity schedule, I think it's G, that we will talk a little bit more about.
And just as a side note to that, I see Miss McCurry. Councillor McCurry, please.
I was just wondering if we could talk a bit more about the development charges going into a negative territory there, because I thought that, I mean, it looks like a lot of that's caused by, and Brant-Waterloo Road is a big project. Is that sort of why that's going negative? And I thought that we would be collecting enough development charges to offset the cost of that.
So this development charges to this line in particular is not just infrastructure. You'll see it also includes the public works facilities. So when we skip over to the next page, you'll start, well, when we talk about facilities, that's part of the reason that this number comes to the deficit.
Oh, so it's not the road then?
Not just the road, no. It's very difficult. Some of these reserves are used in different, for different types of assets. So I had to roll this line in. So this, it says $2.5 million in a deficit, and it doesn't look like we're even spending that much on this page. But when you flip over to the next page, you'll see that's where the money came out of. It's the Public Works Depot. And that's why I tried to roll it up on page on, I think it's scheduled G, like I said before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Okay.
it, Margaret?
For the time being, yeah.
Okay, CEO McNeely.
So Madam Mayor, just as the treasurer was indicating, that combined development charges for public works deals with rolling stock, public works facility expansion, and road reconstruction that's attributed to growth. There's very little attributed to rolling stock. The vast majority is for the reconstruction of Brant Waterloo Road, basically from Trussler all the way through to Spraggs in certain stages or increments, as well as Reedsville Road from the Brant Waterloo Road up to Wrigley. And it's taking it from a gravel surface to a higher standard asphalt and building the roads up to accommodate the weight and vehicles, volume of vehicles that would use it attributed to growth. So part of the issue is timing. Sometimes the road needs to be improved leading into the early phases of that development. So you haven't yet accrued the yield of lots within a subdivision or a group of subdivisions to pay for that infrastructure. But the issue is you can't really leave the gravel road because you'll be constantly out there dealing with either dust related issues and or deterioration of the gravel surface. So, you know, it's a sequencing of cash flow based upon development yield and what infrastructure needs to be front-ended to support the emerging development. We are allowed under the Development Charges Act, if we have to finance, bridge finance, the payout early of infrastructure to accommodate development, we can carry that funding or financing cost into future development charges so that it's recovered. The other thing is we may look at sections of that Brant Waterloo Road, if I look at it in isolation, where we may approach the developer that's going to be the initial beneficiary of that investment and say, you're going to front-end finance that portion of the rebuild of the road, and you will get development charge credits on the road portion every time you draw a building permit. And so there's different models that are available to us to fund it. We have not gotten to that level of analysis at this point in time, but certainly as we move closer to the delivery year, the funding strategy and how we would achieve the completion of those projects will have to be a separate discussion report to council, which would inform that that year's capital budget. The other thing we don't know is we've worked on a certain premise of development per year. If development occurs perhaps faster, then obviously there's more revenue coming in a given year for development charges that we'd have available to complete projects. Conversely, if for some reason in this 10-year period, there's a slowdown in the economy and the rate of growth drops, then capital related projects that are attributed to growth would be pushed out a few years, because obviously then the pressure for that piece of infrastructure, whatever it may be, wouldn't be needed as early in the time period as shown today. That's why Ms. Dettel indicated that, you know, the 10-year forecast is fluid. It's based on certain assumptions. Each year the capital budget has to be approved. So this year, for example, council only dealt with the 21 capital, and we make adjustments to the 10-year forecast as new information becomes available in coming months, coming years, and as further refinement occurs. But right now, the public works infrastructure attributed to growth is a very compressed time period, and it's a large ticket set items with the reconstruction of those gravel roads that frame the south end of Ayr. And we're 100% responsible for that cost. So Brant, because it's a boundary road, will not be contributing to that cost because it's directly attributed to growth. It's not just the background traffic as we know it that would normally enjoy the use of that road. The development charges background report that council adopted based on the analysis of Watson and Associates has attributed 100% of the cost of those improvements to the road system to development charges.
I just wanted to mention that at the Roma conference, I was approached by the province to sit on a committee to review the aggregate levy. So should be an interesting time. I think OSSGA is going to come out hot and heavy on nothing. And I'm going to be pushing the other way using the information I have from us that although we're third largest in the province, we only receive a $600,000 from the levy, and yet 1 kilometer of road costs $990,000. So it'll be an interesting discussion that'll take place over the next 3 months. So let's hope.
Just to that, yeah, just to that point, Madam Mayor. So in this long-term projection, we actually have that it would be 700,000 is how much we hope to get from the aggregates, because we know that there has been an increase in the quantity. We believe there is, but the license fees haven't kept up to that level. So this number may need to be updated when we come back in June, depending on when I get the final numbers from 2019 received. Because we did build in, based on numbers that we were getting back in 2017 and 2018, that we would double the amount of funds because the levy, the license fee doubled, but we didn't actually receive that. So I have done an analysis and I can give it to you and to CEO McNeely as to how much we actually have received in funding and what the difference is year over year. But
that would be perfect.
Yeah, we rely heavily on that aggregates, the reserve. And so, and that's another one. So just at the bottom here, you'll see we've got the aggregate reserve balance and how much it is as it carries forward, and it dwindles to almost nothing when we get farther out into the end of the 10-year. But by the same token, we start to build up in the infrastructure reserve. We have started building this one up. Now, one of the things that's happened, we have had a surplus a couple of years, and any money that we've been trying to allocate it into that, and that is sort of our buffer in case we aren't able to maintain the level of money that comes in from the aggregate reserve, or sorry, the aggregate licensing fees, and build up that infrastructure reserve so that we have something. And even that, you see, it gets fairly low over here. And so 23, 24. But at least it's there. So we're trying to get away from all the reliance that we have on some of these external revenues and make sure that we have something built into the tax rate, because otherwise our tax rate, if something happened and those funds weren't received, the tax rate would have to be increased substantially in order to keep up with the infrastructure projects that are in the 10-year.
Councilor Rollerman and then CEO McNeely.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess the question I have is with regards to Brant Waterloo Road. If we are not allowed to build any subdivisions beyond essentially Reedsville Road, why are we worrying about paving that road any further to the east? Really, it's only going to be a concern for dust and gravel and noise, whatever, on the travel portion from, let's say, Swan Street to the new subdivisions. I don't know if we need to really be worrying about future paving, because we can never recoup those costs for development charges because we can't develop that area of our township. So I'm just curious, why are we including this in our 10-year capital plan?
Thank you, CEO McNeely.
So Madam Mayor, I'll answer Councillor Rollerman's question first and then add on the comment that I wish to put on to the back end of Ms. Stettle's comments. So in the development charges study and the levy that's currently being charged, we have accounted for the hard topping of the road east of the hill at Reedsville Road through to where the existing asphalt starts in the vicinity of Hillside Trailer Park. And the reason is because traffic is going to continue to increase, and it's the wear and tear and long-term maintenance for a gravel road. And it's the frequency of having to go out and either deal with grading and or dust suppressant. And, you know, that's throwaway money. And the concern is it places an undue burden on your operating budget year after year and in the cumulative effect. So we have accounted for that road to be resurfaced. It may not have asphalt. It may be a different surface like the double layer surface treatment. But we've got traffic that's going to try and get easterly to the Sprague's Road corridor. It may be because they want to travel through to Glen Morris and down the Highway 24 corridor into either Hamilton area and or the 403 as a different route than going down the Air Road. So it's just a traffic dispersion caused by that growth in the southern tier of Air. And I forgot what my comment was that I wanted to add to Ms. Stettle's statement.
Well, it may come back to you while Councillor Rollman asks another question. Councillor Rollman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I didn't mean to throw you off there, CAO. I just wanted to just sort of delve a little bit deeper into that, because I know we had discussed a couple of years ago, I think a previous council, the concern that I had, and I think other members of council also had it, was, are we in fact creating a ring road around Air at our township expense, when in reality, this ring road should be funded by the region? If this truly is a dispersing of traffic that's traveling through our township and not staying in our township, is people going to Hamilton or people coming from Paris, why should the township undertake this large expense when really this is going to be serving the function as a regional road? Is there any mechanism that we have as a council to shift some of the funding to the region?
So we did have 4 roads. Take a look at the subdivisions and those network of road in the southern tier. They do not serve the purpose of a regional road by traffic volume. Generally, a regional road starts at a certain threshold of background traffic. The trip generator increase is taking the subdivisions along the southern tier and modeling how they may be dispersed to those area roads. So it's not really others outside of North Dumfries adding substantive increase to the traffic. It's strictly attributed to those subdivisions along the southern tier. You know, if the reality is, if someone's coming up from the central part of Brant and wants to get over to Sprague's Road or the Highway 24 corridor, they're going to take the Drumbo Road, because that's what they're going to cross over first. If you are in the northern portion of Air, you're likely going to use the other existing corridors like a Greenfield or an Alps to get over to the Sprague's Road corridor. It's just that these developments frame the Brant-Waterloo Road. They enter onto the Brant-Waterloo Road, and they'll be dispersing east-west, north-south, as the case may be, off of that corridor. We won't actually know the commute patterns of people until that growth actually starts to occur, and we'll have to monitor it through the traffic counters. The consultants, when they submitted their plans of subdivisions, were responsible to do a traffic analysis, and it does show a dispersal to that area-wide network.
Councillor Roman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one last follow-up to this. Would we not be further ahead to propose a new road closer to, say, through the Gillespie farm that would open up those lands to future subdivisions and allow traffic to flow out of, say, Vincent and, you know, some of those new streets, flow to the east or to the east around our village, and not go as far east as Reedsville Road, but create a new road, a closer ring road, if you will, that would allow us to open up those lands, and then we could gather more development charges from those future expansion. I know right now it's not in the settlement area, but I'm sure the province will be looking at changing some of the settlement areas. So perhaps would we be further ahead to propose a new road and maybe have that road align differently than what it is currently?
CEO McNeely.
So, Madam Mayor, Councillor Rowland, you're quite correct. Today, if I use the word, the Gillespie farm is divided in about half. And the Bruce subdivision, which has draft plan approval, and then obviously the Freer Challenger neighborhood, and then if I continue further to the north, you know, Schmidt Park, that string represents the settlement boundary as we know it. It was modeled based on population growth to 2031. The region, with the consultation of the 7 area municipalities, are now looking at growth patterns, growth opportunities for 2041 and 2051. Okay. And that analysis will inform the future updates to the regional official plan, and then obviously trickle down to the area municipalities. So right now, today as we speak, I don't know what the increased population that may be assigned to AIR would be post 2031. It's logical for us that if we need more greenfield development and there's an allocation of population, that the ideal spot for us would actually be to the east of the existing settlement boundary. And yes, it would be nice to actually have a north-south mid-block collector that would link Wrigley to the Brant-Waterloo Road. That road, depending upon how it's constructed and how it incorporates into emerging neighborhoods, may not need to be funded by development charges, and could be the responsibility of the builder as they open up their various phases. Council, in the approval of the 2019 development charges and the 2020 update, was very shrewd. Council adopted as a service level that mid-block collectors within a plan of subdivision are the responsibility of the developer when they open up their lands. Now, if there are portions that aren't part of a development, we would include those portions of that corridor into a future development charges update. Today, we cannot include that in development charges because there is no development there and it's not part of the settlement boundary. But in the next 2 to 3 years, as the region goes through their official plan update, if there's a change and there's an allocation to North Dumfries that requires us to add more greenfield, we would then go and adjust our development charges, because now there'll be additional neighborhood parks that may be required to accommodate those future neighborhoods. There could be other infrastructure requirements like a collector road and or portions of that collector road. But it would be ideal to intercept as much of that north-south traffic as possible on a properly designed north-south road. Reedsville Road in its present form can be improved. However, it will never be an ideal north-south road just because of land constraints, the environmental systems, and change of grade. And so it'd be nice if we could disperse that over other roads. to reduce that conflict and or the limitations of the Reedsville corridor.
We've talked a long time about that, Councillor Rollerman, even back into Joe Martin's day. And the problem being is by the Gillespie Farm, the environmental impact on the significant lands there, the wetlands and stuff. And then when you get closer down, we were actually looking at a road that would, what's the property next to Michelle Smith? What's her name? I forget her name. They wanted to bring that land into developmental areas. They have been turned down so far, but they want that farm to be developed eventually, should they win that in the official plan, and I'm sure we'll see that again rather soon. We were thinking a road that would actually run down their property, that farm property, and it would be built as a proper type of road. But again, we still have that significant wetland that will always be a barrier to a road. Any other comments? Then Ms. Stedall, please go forward.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I'm going to move into facilities, because this is another large meeting I'm sure we'll have. So we'll start with, we've broken it again down into departments. It makes it easier to follow through. So we've started with the fire facilities, and there is some major work that's planned in 2022. It is being funded through development charges because it is attributable to growth. We have the public works facilities, and this came, the initial discussion started with, there was some work a few years ago talking about increasing or changing up the public works facilities. They're in need of a lot of retrofit. And then the discussion came up and about actually building a new building. And there's a phase 1 and a phase 2. We start in 22, 20, and then go into 2023. We have got this built into our development charge study. So there is some money that is going to be attributable there. But this is the first time you're going to see we're going to need some debt. And that is, it's attributable to the fact that we need to keep this taxation line at a reasonable level. We've utilized everything we can. So this development charge line, I'm just going to flip back one page. You'll see that this 2,492,000, that actually includes the facility. And that's why it's showing up here that we're only borrowing $1.7 million. And then the repayment of the debt is shown here on this line for the public works debt. But you'll see that the debt is required, instead of building it all into taxation in the 1 year, the recommendation is that we do go with debt over a 20-year period. And I've done an estimate at 4%. That's just a number that I use. It's always conservative, high right now. Who knows what's going to happen in 2023, but it's a 20-year repayment. And what happens is you'll see that we are currently going from $37,000 or $52,000 this year that's being levied from taxes, and that's moving up to 133, 136, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you start taking, what the sections that we have in A, B, C, D, and then we get into the next section, E, of the capital plan, it starts to accumulate. So it doesn't look like it's a huge increase here, but it is when we start doing the accumulation.
And if I can just interject about the building. I was first elected in council in 1998. And that was already, that building had been deferred 4 years in advance before, and it had need replacing by back then. So this infrastructure has to go, and we have to do the right thing. Councillor Rollerman and then Councillor McCreary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree that I had a tour of that facility, and it's in pretty sad shape right now. So we do need to do some work. I guess I was just wondering about the timing. Rather than trying to cram everything into 2022, is there not some way that we can move some of the work forward to 2021 and maybe spread the cost a little bit? I would rather see it get started on it sooner and not have just 600,000 in phase 1 and then 4 million in phase 2. Is there not a way we can break it up a little differently, move some of those costs into phase 1, maybe get phase 1 a bit more happening in phase 1, and that way phase 2 would be a little easier to stomach?
Council McCreary first and then CEO McNeely. Council McCreary. You're on mute.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering about the sand salt storage structure, $236,000. Is that a new structure? Because I see we are replacing the roof on the dome, but is this an additional structure? And what would that be for?
CEO McNeely to both questions.
Madam Mayor, I can answer both questions. I'll start with Councillor Rolleman and then Councillor McCreary's question. So Councillor Rolleman, the $4.8 million the $4.6 million in 2022 is a place marker. And what we now have to do, and part of the reason we've set aside money this year, is we have to look at a phasing strategy and prioritize key elements. We know that the operations building where staff reside, that's an immediate because of conflicts with their current space. Excuse me. And so that was relatively easy to extrapolate out and identify as a deliverable for next year. The other components could be done conceivably in 2 or 3 phases and spread over the 10-year forecast. Ms. Robinson and I have a meeting on Tuesday morning, and part of that meeting is to discuss what resources do we need to bring in this year to help us inform the work plan in terms of technical work, like geotechnical work, to determine where buildings can go, and also to look at starting a phasing strategy. So you may see in the August workshop where we take that $4.6 million, and while the number may be the same, it could be spread over 2 or 3 intervals in the 10-year forecast. So we're in the infancy of that. What we do know is we do in this 10-year period need to do some major work at that facility. We just haven't broken it out into those further phases beyond just dealing with the staff component for next year. Councillor McCreary, this would be a second building, and it would be, as our inventory continues to grow in terms of road, we will need additional capacity for the storage of materials. And that's why it's in the middle part of the 10-year forecast. We're also looking at changing some of our material to an alternative to what we've done, which may require then less product on a per lane kilometer to be utilized, so that may be more environmentally sustainable, but you can't cross-contaminate it with some of the traditional material we use. So this new sand salt building is funded through development charges because it's attributed to growth because of the increased lane kilometers that we will be acquiring as new developments emerge, but it's also looking at an alternative product to be used as part of our winter maintenance exercise. The region was agreeable, along with, I believe it was the city of Waterloo, to look at this alternative material. And so we're all enjoying the results of their pilot project with this new alternative material and how effective it is based on traffic, temperature, wind variables, and the like. And we may find it to be attractive going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. No more questions. Ms. Zero.
So the next section are facilities. They're rather large as well as the recreation facilities. So there's a bit of more of a breakdown here. There's a lot of facilities within recreation. So, and we've also added in the administration, not to keep it separate. So we have the administration, the township project, which we have the beginning of this year in 2021. Then we have the NDCC, and it's got a number of different items throughout, just maintaining the current building that we have. The twin pad project has been added in, and you'll see that that is actually scheduled for the work that has been approved for the design this year. The work would start based on potential funding, could start in 2025. Then the ACC. So as to given the direction of council, the upgrading of the ice plant was taken out. That was $945,000, and the adaptive reuse has been added back in again. And other items that are here with the ACC, they're in order to maintain that building, so the roof and the parking lot and other facility upgrades are still left in. And do you want me to stop there or finish the page? I see Councillor Rowland has his hand
Councillor
raised.
Rowland, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a concern about how we're handling what I call the NDCC redesign. We're looking at, adding on potentially a township office. We're looking at adding on a twin pad arena, but we're also thinking about maybe in the future adding on a pool. So what I'm concerned about is we aren't looking at all three projects together. We're looking at each one in isolation. So if we build a twin pad and we build a township office, then maybe there's no room for a pool because we don't have the land. Or if we build a pool and a township office, then there's no room for a twin pad because we don't have the land. I think we need to take the design of the township office and the design of the twin pad, merge those two things together, call it an NDCC redesign, and accommodate all three projects. And then we can phase those projects in as the community demands it. So we plan for a town hall, we plan for a twin pad, we plan for a pool. Sure, we don't build all three things at once, but we lay it all out on that piece of land. So that way future councils know exactly where to plug in the pool, where exactly to plug in the twin pad, where exactly to plug in the town office, instead of just doing it in an ad hoc way that is going to lead to, as we know, 10 years from now, oh, sorry, there's no room on this piece of land for a pool, or there's no room here for a twin pad. And I don't want to see any of those groups lose out because we're not taking the proper steps to plan. So I'm going to suggest that we take that, merge together, rethink of what we're calling it, and look at the whole project as one big project with three phases.
CEO McNeely and then Councillor McCurry.
So, Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Rowland. You're right. All three big build capital projects are notionally planned for the NDCC. And yes, if they all come together, it creates a hub of activities, indoor, outdoor, here at 2958 Greenfield Road. Staff have already looked at land budgets for accommodation of a town hall, the admin, and a protected footprint for the indoor pool. So that was going to be a report. Staff actually met, senior management actually met today to talk about the town hall project and how to bring forward new information to council related to that project, and how it ties into other corporate initiatives. The town hall has been suggested to be built on the west end of the existing complex, so adjacent the Dumfries Room Seniors Complex, with a link between the existing building and the new town hall. The twin pad would be generally in line with where the dog park presently is. So if you take the rear elevation of the current Lang's building, dovetail it so that it ties into the existing arena portion of the NDCC, that accommodates the twin pad. Now, that works on the proviso that we don't have a large seating component for spectators. So if we stay in that 200 to 300 range, then it fits into that footprint. The pool, if it was to be pursued, would be adjacent to the east of the existing Lang's Medical Healthcare Center in that location. If council moves ahead with the twin pad as the project in advance of the indoor pool, what I would be suggesting that council do is pre-plumb, as part of the arena project, the transfer pipes to allow the heating, cooling effects of both the pool and the heating coming off of the ice plant, to allow for the exchange between the two envelopes so that you have overall energy savings at both ends of the two respective facilities. The cost of putting in dark pipe as part of the initial build isn't a significant cost, but it allows you, as a later phase, if the pool does advance, to capitalize on that exchange of heat energy between the two facilities in the fullness of time. So staff have thought about how that lays out, and how we can maximize the potential between the different buildings. We also understand how we can leverage and build on existing committed infrastructure that's already in the ground, whether it be the internal water and sanitary sewers, hydro distribution, as well as the parking that's presently available.
Councilor McCreary.
Thank you, Mayor Foxton. I have a couple concerns here. My first one is the adaptive reuse for the ACC. And I see that we're not designing that until 2023 and not actually doing the work until 2026. And I think everyone has agreed, and it shows in our capital plan here, that we're not going to keep that arena going as an ice surface, that it is going to be phased out, and that when the ice plant finally gives out, which might not be too many years away, we're not going to spend money to revive it and keep it going. So I'm wondering if we aren't, we should move the adapted reuse design up even into 2021. It's a relatively small project. We don't need to go out and get grant money, which is uncertain. We don't need to borrow a lot of money to do it. It's actually less than $1 million. And that way we could get the design done and we'd be ready to go as soon as the building was no longer useful as an arena. I think that's very important to the community to get that going, because it could significantly increase the recreational options that are available that we can offer to people. And I would hate to see the building just sort of boarded up and sitting there for a couple of years because we haven't gotten ready for the design, and we just are waiting to design something and not using the building at all. So I'd like to be a little bit more proactive on the ACC and move that design up into 2021 to be ready to go when we need to.
And just before you can see, McNeely, if you look at the new arena won't be built till 2025, which means that we'll probably be using the ACC until 2025. So I think, but CEO McNeely, go ahead.
So Madam Mayor, through to Councillor McCreary, Madam Mayor is correct. It's a phasing sequencing. So we are working on the premise that the current ACC ice plant will continue to operate until such time as the facility can be retired because the twin pad is operational. You are correct that if for some reason between present and when the twin pad is available, if the ice plant has a major failure or the brine distribution system has a major failure, it doesn't make sense in terms of economic investment to replace something that might have a shelf life of 1 or 3 years, depending upon, wherever we are in the schedule. So we have modeled this on 2 key premises. The facility continues to be able to operate as an arena until the twin pad is ready to assume ice. At that point in time, the physical work then of changing the pad area into recreational indoor uses would physically occur. So as Madam Mayor has said, the build timeline for the NDCC twinning is generally in that 24 and finishing up in 25 time period. And that's why, the construction window for the ACC would be 25, 26. We've done the design work in 23 because there's no urgency to have it done today because it may not be available until 25, 26 time period. We've put it in the forecast to signal from both a workload perspective as well as a cash outlay when we would need to do that work. My concern about moving it ahead to 21 is just the volume of work in 21. We have a whole range of projects already in the 21 capital budget. I'm concerned about stretching resources and their ability to deliver upon the work assignment. And because there's no immediate urgency, because it's not necessarily going to be required next year, the premise was we would do it a couple of years ahead of the anticipated delivery date. Mm-hmm. And so that's the basis of what you see in terms of scheduling and sequencing, and why it's broken out in that manner. It doesn't remove the urgency or the need for the adaptive reuse. I think that's going to be a well-received and heavily utilized project once available, but it's just transitioning from one use to the other.
Councillor McCreary and then Councillor Rowland.
Okay, I'm actually sort of surprised you think that the ice plant will keep going for another 5 years, but that's okay. We're projecting that. That's fine. My next concern is the design of the twin pad and our leisure studies plan. I want to make sure that our leisure studies plan is done first. I think it should be the priority because it will give us some information. We'll be better informed about what the mood of the community actually is. So that should be, I believe, the first thing that our new rec director starts with. And I would suggest that the twin pad design should actually be pushed forward to 2022. We aren't actually projecting to build the twin pad until 2025. We don't want to do the design too many years ahead of the actual construction. And I just think that we really should have that leisure studies plan information in hand before we go ahead with this twin pad design.
CEO McNeely.
So, Madam Mayor, in December, I brought forward a report with a framework of what would be captured within a leisure services master plan. Council asked that that be stayed and returned back in April. And so that report from December will return in April, and council will have to decide at that point in time whether to move forward with it. I agree that that study is long overdue. It will give us a blueprint looking at broader leisure programming aspects. So that's both active and passive, indoor and outdoor, cultural, related activities, as well as what the corresponding infrastructure that would be required to support that study. So there's a resolution on the books. I'm to return back in April, and council will at that time decide what they want to do with that study. As it relates to why is the funding for the twin pad in the 21 budget, it's a matter of timing. So it's driven by a couple of motivating factors. The consultants in the arena strategy said a tight timeline would be from the sign you say you want to move forward, it's 3 years. So the build timeline would straddle the 24-25 window if we start work on that project with design in the present time period, being calendar year 21. So that's one aspect of why design's in 21. The other aspect deals with funding. There is a significant amount of dollars necessary from upper level governments to provide grants to support the Twin Pad project. We are led to believe, based on discussions in the fall economic statement by the federal government, that they're proposing a $100 billion infrastructure account that will be funded over 3 years. It's anticipated that the specifics of that future infrastructure grant program will be announced in the spring budget. So, we're led to believe that the federal budget will be sometime in March, and that future infrastructure program will form part of that budget document. The closer we are to having a truth project and a better understanding of true order of magnitude cost for the delivery of that project will help us with the grant application, because it will create a tighter proposal. We do know that one of the objectives of this future infrastructure program is part of the recovery coming out of COVID. So us starting our work now, preparatory to inform that future grant opportunity or grant window, is the second part of why it was shown in a 21 deliverable.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been on Zoom since 1:30. I need to take a 30-second bio break. I promise I'll be right back. Will you give me just 1 minute? Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
May I continue on with my comment, or do you want me to wait?
Actually, it was Councilor Rollman next, and then it was Councilor Austin.
I'm sorry, that was all garbled. I didn't hear
I
it.
believe it was Councillor Rollman is next, and then you yourself, Councillor Austin.
Is my hand raised in there on the screen there, Shelley?
No, but the raised hand.
Yes, it's on my screen.
Okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
I think Councillor McCreary is the deputy mayor. Maybe you'd like to continue?
Yeah, if Councillor McCreary would like to continue the discussion.
Okay, is Councillor Rollman next?
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Rollman?
There we go. Can you hear me now? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess I'm still back to my first question to the CAO, and we don't know for sure if the Leisure Studies master plan is going to say twin pad first or pool first. That's why I was saying we should do a design that has both those things planned out, and then that way, if the funding comes from the federal government and the community is pushing us for a pool, then perhaps the pool is also shovel ready, and we can apply for a grant for the pool. We don't know if it's going to be a pool or a twin pad, but we do know that we have 3 projects all related to the NDCC. And that's why I'm recommending that we make one design that will encompass all 3 projects. And then that way, if and when the funding comes ready, and depending on what the community tells us they want, we're ready to go with either a pool or with a twin pad.
A comment I'd like to make is I think that at the time we deferred that leisure services study, we were not at the point where we were going to be doing a twin pad design. I think that was, the leisure services study was deferred before that. So council may not have made that decision now, given the same choices. Councillor Ostner?
I'm back.
Thank you. So basically my comments, Andrew CEO McNeely has answered them in much further depth. Yeah, we had the study done for the twin pad. The study came out as we expected it would come out, and I think that the twin pad is definitely a project that needs to be planned before the pool, simply because we're on borrowed time with the ACC, and there's no borrowed time on any building for the pool. It's just the fact that we don't have a pool. And so I'm not in agreement to start putting all these designs together and blow this project up as to the direction that we've basically had for the last several months. And we agreed as council that we were going to move this forward, put this design in for this year. And I don't like the signals of start bumping the twin pad design and sliding in the pool ahead of the project, when we spent all this money for a consultant to come in and tell us the conditions of our ice arenas and what we need to do, and the twin pad was a preferred design that we all agreed on, and the ACC was going to be repurposed. Well, now you're going to take all that money we spent, all that time that we spent doing that, and saying, well, wait a second now, let's start looking at the pool. Yet we haven't done any designs, any studies, anything that supports the fact that the majority of the township wants a pool. But we do see the needs for the twin pad, for the second pad. So I think we need to put the brakes on clamming all these things together and stick to what our plan was, get this assessment done or get this design done, so we know what it's going to cost us, what it's going to look like, and we need to start funding. I mean, we can't go to the CCG, hold this design off for a year or 2 years, and then go to the CCG and say, okay, hurry up, you've got 2 years to raise your portion of the money. So, as CEO McNeely says, it takes time, and the funding takes time. Everything takes time. It's not going to happen in 1 year to build a second pad. Same thing with the pool. If the pool gets, if we decide that the pool is going to get done, we haven't done the steps that we've done for the assessment for the twin pad. So we're putting the horse before the cart when we're talking about putting the twin pad aside for the pool. So I think we need to stick on course with what we started from the beginning.
If I may, before we go on, I have to, the study for the twin pad has been done. We've been talking about a twin, not a twin pad, but our problems with the ACC for longer than this council has existed or the previous council. We have always known we're heading in a direction where the ACC will have reached its lifespan. The talk about the pool has been on a wish list, and it's still on a wish list. The recreational study that we're asking for is not to just encompass a pool. It is to look at things like the bowling green, more soccer fields, other facilities, recreation facilities, leisure facilities that don't necessarily involve sports. That's what the plan is, and that's to help us through the next 20 years. A pool requires a population of 10,000 people to maintain it. We're not there yet, but we have to start planning today should the study show that. We have already done the study for the twin pad. We have already been given the direction by professionals. And therefore, I think that going ahead with it, but preparing for the future of our next phases in recreation and leisure falls into line with the way we have it lined out right now. Councillor Rollman and then Councillor Osner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So with all due respect, I'm not convinced that a twin pad is a must-have. I would say a twin pad on the same level as a pool. They're both nice to haves. It'd be nice to have a pool. It'd be nice to have a twin pad. We have an arena. So I really favor talking to the public and making that study, that leisure study, having them tell us what they want. I don't want to make a decision to build a twin pad based on a survey that we did of ice users. We went to the ice users and said, do you want another pad? And all the ice users said, yes, we do. But we did not ask the regular citizens. I've been approached by a lot of citizens in the last few weeks at the Foodland, at the post office. They've called me to say to me, please consider other options other than a twin pad. It's $13, $14, $15 million that we're committing to before we've even asked the public what they want. And I think in order to be transparent and open, we need to do a proper study of and a proper survey of our residents, do that leisure services master plan, get real facts, real information from a wide variety of the population, not just from a narrow user group, but from a wide variety of people as to what they want. And they may all come back and say they want a dog park, or they may say we want a pump track. I don't know what they're going to say, but before we commit ourselves to one project, why don't we just wait until this leisure study is done, and then we will know going forward, we'll have real information, we'll have real facts.
And I think that even regardless of what, I mean, we have to look at what the study told us, and not from the public, but from the professionals and the actual lifespan of the ACC and the repairs and upkeep and everything else. I believe it should be Councillor McCreary next and Councillor Ossner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to agree with what Councillor Rolleman is saying. I've had some people calling me about the twin pad design issue. They're upset that that there's other needs in the community that aren't being addressed, and that all this money is being spent on hockey, and that there's other things people want to do. So that's why I was suggesting that we do need that leisure study to be done first. So that will inform us what the actual, mood of the public is, that there are other needs out there that aren't being met, and that we as councillors have to recognize that and make sure that the voice of those people is heard. So I'd like to see the leisure studies done before we go ahead with the twin pad design.
Councillor Ossner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe that we did an online survey with our Parks and Rec and facilities, and had the options people had the options of what facilities that they thought that we should do. That was an online thing, was it not?
CEO McNeely, will you clarify, please? Did we lose CEO? Go ahead.
For my clarity, Councillor Ossner, are you asking me about the surveying or the public engagement that was done as part of the arena strategy? Or are you talking about work that was done in 2009 as part of the analysis and support of the NDCC as we know it?
Sorry, did you say, CEO McNeil, did you say 2009 or 2019? Because you cut out.
Okay, sorry. I'm aware of two different eras of time when there was public engagement. In 2009, there was work done that informed what is the NDCC as we know it today. In 2020, as part of the arena strategy, there was public consultation. So when you talk about surveying people, which time period were you speaking of? And
I'm not speaking 11, 12, 10 years ago. Or 12 years ago, sorry. Right. I'm talking about recently. We had discussions on facilities and what we wanted to see, which was all part of this survey.
Okay. And so I can answer that question then. So as part of
you did. Sorry, Andrew, you already did answer the question. There was two done, 2009, 2020.
But the contents of them, CEO McNeely, please carry on.
The 2020 study was focused on ICE need, want, what was to be incorporated into it. So it was focused on indoor ice. That said, people wrote in, because obviously there was blank areas where do you have additional comments or items. There was the write-in comment, and people did in that area, unprompted, identified other recreational type activities, including gymnasium, indoor pool, pump track, I've forgotten what else was listed, but the engagement tested, evaluated indoor ice. That was the predominance of the questions that
Right.
were asked.
Right. Okay. So my question is, we made this decision to do the needs ice assessment, to go through that whole process. And now I'm not understanding why certain members of council are now second guessing the very decisions that they made to go ahead with this ice needs assessment. And then we spend all that money to get the ice needs assessment done, and it comes out to what appears to be a logical solution. And again, we move forward with it. And then now when it comes down to the end of the budget, some members are having a reversal of thought because they've had conversations with members of the public, which is undocumented, whereas this is documented with council. This is documented at our council meetings. Like we can't just all of a sudden put the brakes and throw it away because we've just decided, woke up one day and said, hey, I've had a few people talk to me about a pool, so now I think we better put the brakes on an ice surface. I mean, that's not the responsible way to move forward. We've put time and effort and decision into this, and I think we have to move forward with it because we've invested a lot of time and money and input on it. And that does not mean that I've had several discussions with people about a pool. And so now we got to scrap this. So I think we got to think really hard before we do that, because I think we're gonna put a black eye on council if that's how we're gonna handle our decisions.
Councillor Gillespie.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I tend to agree with Councillor Rollerman and Councillor McCurry. I've always had reservations about that ice arena strategy because we just asked the people that use the arena if they want an arena. Well, sure, they want an arena. And I'd love an arena too, but the problem is, how are we going to pay for this thing? I was reading today the comments from people at the back. There's loads, I would say over half of them have wanted a pool more than a twin pad. So I think we really need to do the leisure studies plan first and get a real feel for the thing. I also think that we should move out the office project design another year because, as we know, with COVID, no one's in an office right now. Do we need a huge office built? So I can't see why we can't move that design out another year and see how things improve after COVID. Yeah, I was interested in one of the ladies that was speaking at Roma was talking about the recovery from COVID. She was talking about a human rights recovery. If we get money for infrastructure, is a twin pad a human rights recovery? I would say that we should be looking at affordable housing, food security, before we even think of a twin pad arena. Thank you.
Councillor McCurry and then Osner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I would need to sort of clear up or reiterate my position. I would love to build a twin pad. It would be great to have that for people to use. My suggestion was not to stop it and scrap it, not at all. My suggestion was merely to defer the design for 1 year while we got the information from the leisure studies. And as councillors, we are here to represent everyone in our community, and there's a lot of different views out there. We have to make sure that everyone is heard.
I don't see a problem with that, but CEO McNeely will have to answer that. Councillor Gillespie was next.
Sorry, I guess I didn't take my hand down. I was having problems with my hand. Yeah, but I was going to say something else. I forget what that was now. I'll come back to it. I'll take my hand.
Okay, thank you. CEO McNeely, would it be a problem to move it out a year and let the leisure study go ahead? You're on mute, CEO McNeely.
having one of those days. The Leisure Services Master Plan was anticipated to take approximately 1 calendar year to complete. That's why I brought the terms of reference to council back in December with the expectation of being able to go into the marketplace and by April be in a position to do a contract award and the consultant then starting their work. So, you know, obviously we're not at that point in time. And we'd be looking at, you know, well into the first quarter of 22 before the Leisure Services Master Plan would be in a final form for presentation to council. So if you move the design phase out a year, you move the build timeline out another year, because remember the consultant said you've got to account for at least 3 years from the time you signal that you want to do something. I don't know how that may affect our exposure to potential grants that might come out of this federal announcement. That's a big question mark. But the reality is more as it relates to the ACC. We do know we're on borrowed time. We do know we're coming to the end of the life of the core pieces of infrastructure associated with the ice plant and the brine distribution system. No one knows what day or what year there may be that a significant breakdown with the system. But I can say the further out we go, the higher the probability will be. So, you know, it's a cautionary tale that, you know, if we push the design out a year, then we push the construction window out a year, and that may have other implications by that.
And also the cost goes out a year, which is another thing.
Well, the consultants have told us in that report that generally building construction's been having an escalation factor of about 5%. So yes, if you move it out another year, notionally, you're adding another 5% to the overall construction value. There's a lot of variables that go into the pricing indices, but that's what they've recommended as an escalator over time, and that's what Ms. Stedel has shown in the forecast specifically to that kind of build. So if I'm understanding council, some members of council are saying they're not challenging the integrity or the nature of the projects. It's sequencing and prioritization. And you feel that the Leisure Services Master Plan will provide you with the broader outcome and perspective of, I'll call it the field of leisure, which includes active and passive recreation uses, as well as cultural and event type opportunities. And council will then, from the key conclusions emerging from that, inform further updates to the capital forecast. And there may be projects coming out of that study that are identified as priorities that presently aren't included in your 10-year forecast. And they may affect either parks and or facilities as potential deliverables. So am I interpreting that correctly?
I believe so. Does anybody disagree with what CEO McNeely's interpreting?
Well, I think if anything's going to be moved, we got to vote on it, correct?
Well,
Yeah,
we're just
I'm
in
asking-
discussion phase right now.
I'm just trying to crystallize what I believe to be the discussion as an alternative to what's shown in the current draft of the 10-year forecast.
So, did you have anything further to say, CEO McNeely?
No, Madam
Okay,
Mayor.
and I'm going to put in another 2 cents worth in. We have a study that showed us we have a failing building. We've been talking about a failing building for a long time. And I think it's our responsibility to move with the facilities that are failing. And the studies do show the need for a second pad, not just by public opinion, but by professionals that we handle for the site, professionals that were going to do a leisure study as well. And I don't really believe it is, I think it's our responsibility to follow through with our duty based upon a report given to us by professionals. And leisure study plan, we've just hired a new staff. They're not going to be up and running and doing this thing right away. And to give them a little bit of time to get their feet wet and know our community and then get the study going on with an RFP, I think would be probably more enhanced, especially since it's going to take, as CEO McNeely said, a good physical year. Councillor Rollerman was next, and then Councillor Gillespie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I tend to agree with what the CEO was saying. We need a resolution to move forward if the majority of council wants to look at the leisure studies master plan before we move forward. I'm not against the twin pad. You know, I donated money to the project, you know, years ago. I'm in favor of it, but it's $15 million, it's $20 million, whatever it's going to be. It's a big commitment. I don't want to rush this. I think we need to take our time, do our due diligence, get all the information we can possibly get. As Councillor Gillespie said, it's recovery after COVID. We don't know if anyone's going to even want to play hockey after COVID's over. We don't know if anyone's going to be working out of an office. We don't know what's going to happen. We're speculating, but in the meantime, we're trying to rush to commit ourselves to millions of dollars. As a business owner, I'm not committing my business to millions of dollars of investments right now because I don't know what the future market's going to be. It's the same for us as a township. We don't know what's going to happen after this pandemic is over. So let's just cool our jets a little bit. Let's get that information and then let's move forward. I don't see any reason to rush headlong into something when there's so many uncertainties. I think Councillor Gillespie raised some really good points about bread, not circuses.
Councillor Gillespie.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councillor Rollerman. We need to just slow down, take it easy. And that I agree that it'd be lovely to have a twin pad. It would be wonderful, and a pool as well. But I say the problem is, how do we fund this? Do people really want their taxes raised to get all these little extras? I would think not. Everyone wants hardly any taxes increases. So, and I guess if the CCG wants to start their fundraising, I say go for it right now. They should have been fundraising all along for this. That's what, as a hospital group, you know, because the hospitals raise their funds, we're not going to stop. We're going to keep going because there's always a need there. And you know, they always said they wanted a twin pad. Well, why weren't they continuing to raise funds for that all along? That is a mystery to me. So, but I said, I agree. It would be lovely to have a pool and an arena, but we just have to think of the cost and are there higher priorities for people such as housing and food security? I would think that would be more important right at the moment as we come out of COVID. But yeah, thank you.
But those are not under the jurisdiction of the municipality. Housing is under upper tier, which is regional, which we spoke to ministers at the Roma conference in regards to, and food also and food banks are that assist with that as well as the region. They're not under our. We have to watch what's under our jurisdiction. Now we've talked today about. Even Council McCreary said she didn't think. She thought we were being lucky if we thought the ACC would last as long as the plan has for it right now. So if it fails and we can't meet our needs with our user groups, you know, and hockey's not dying, and the demand for ice time right now is pretty predominant. But that being said, I'm willing to listen to what all council says, and I can't remember if Council McCreary, I think, is next, and then Council Austin. Council McCreary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A comment along the lines of what Councillor Gillespie was saying. One thing that isn't in our capital budget here at all is some funding for internet. I know that that is not an area that the township is responsible for, that's the purview of the federal and provincial governments. However, they have not been putting enough money into the pot for Canadians and all Canadians, and particularly our residents of North Dumfries, to get the internet access that they need. Many municipalities have started to step up to the plate, realizing that this can't wait, that they have to start doing something to help their residents. I get a lot of calls from people who are telling me they have children at home trying to do their homework. They can't log on to their Zoom classes. They're having trouble uploading their homework, and people are trying to run small businesses from home. And this has a very long-term negative effect on our economy and at North Dumfries and the people that live here and the quality of their life. Now, I'm not saying that we should become responsible for getting high quality broadband for the entire township, but I'm wondering if we shouldn't be doing something, starting to set aside some money where we can maybe work with the wireless internet service providers that are here, maybe work with the region, figure out ways where we can expand coverage for people that live here, because this is a very serious problem. Internet has become something like it's an essential service now. It's really like having hydro in your house, and we have a lot of people that don't have it. So really having 2 ice surfaces is really a real luxury. And after that speech, my second comment is maybe we should move the leisure studies program up and start it now instead of waiting till April.
Just on the broadband internet, at the Roma conference, I sat in on the broadband programs and was surprised at how other municipalities have gone ahead with it. When SWIFT did not come through to the way I wanted, I spoke with CEO McNeely right away. He's meeting with the other township CAOs. And once the region heard about that, they contacted me and they said they're also on board to try and find a solution. And there's some amazing solutions out there. But also, we have been putting aside money for broadband. And CEO McNeely, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Councillor McCreary, you're quite correct. If you were to look at either the 21 capital budget or the 10-year forecast, there is nothing identified in terms of direct capital outlay from the township to one or more broadband projects. And that's partly because I'm trying to develop a strategy for presentation to council as a standalone document. And if council then adopts that strategy, there may be in-year amendment to the 21 budget to allow the release of certain funds. And there may be, as part of that, a strategy for future years where council may wish to put aside monies as part of the annual budget to allow for a rollout of a strategy. So what's occurred is the following. In late November, very early December, both the provincial and federal governments, as part of their respective fall economic statements, did identify some investment to underserviced areas. And just so we understand, underservice is 50/10 service standard. And there's a map that's now been created by the federal government that shows us which roads within our township, and in fact across Ontario, are deemed to be underserviced and may be eligible under one or more grant programs. So we sat down virtually, the 4 township CAOs, with Barry Field. He is the CEO of SWIFT. It was about 2 weeks ago. And so we went through a very detailed discussion of both the federal and provincial grant programs. What were their target audience? Who could participate? What were the eligibility requirements? We then talked a little bit about opportunities where the municipalities may be able to incentivize the private sector as a partner through one or more of these grant programs to make it financially attractive to bring fiber to the address in some of these underserviced countryside locations. We also got a better understanding of the next generation of SWIFT 2. So they have largely expended the funds out from the original provincial, federal, municipal contribution. So now they're looking at what is the next opportunity for SWIFT, recognizing that there are significant tracts of the rural countryside across Southwest Ontario that remain unserviced. And next week, I believe they've got a meeting with the MPPs for this area, as well as other pockets across Southwest Ontario, to start that discussion about SWIFT version 2. What has become abundantly clear in my discussions with my partners and SWIFT a couple weeks ago is that SWIFT will not be the answer as a go forward. It's part of a patchwork of a series of programs to bring countryside up to acceptable levels with broadband connectivity. So I am putting together a report that has a strategy. It looks at how we can be directly involved, both in terms of partnerships where there's money, facilitating grant opportunities for internet service providers to access upper level government funding, as well as the SWIFT solution. And it's going to be a little bit of everything to make a system work across the rural countryside. And that's not unique to North Dumfries. That's going to be rural Ontario. Because if we wait for versions of SWIFT in isolation, I don't think we're going to have that full integrated network that's necessary to support the live, work, opportunities that our residents are looking for in these underserviced areas across North Dumfries. So I'm putting that report together. It may be available as late as the 22nd of February, but it is a matter in progress. And that would then, depending upon what council does, may require a specific amendment to the budget if there's some aspects you want to roll out in fiscal year 21. We do have a reserve account. It's in the back of your budget book based on the inserts that were delivered earlier this week. Council did have the foresight to start a capital account. It's in excess of 200,000 as we speak today. And council may want to look at a program to continue to contribute to that reserve for future years. I do know in the town of Caledon, as an example, they have a specific line item in their budget, and it's a direct contribution to an internet broadband program to bring integrated fiber to the address throughout their community. They started that initiative, I'm going from memory, but I believe about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and they're starting to roll that out now in terms of build projects in partnership with private sector investors.
Can I just ask a quick question before I go to Councillor Austin and then Councillor McCurry? Where is the money for the leisure study?
It is.
If you go to studies,
Okay, how much was it?
104,000, I believe.
Okay, let me just
Here on page 6, it's we've got $104,000 in this year's budget.
this year's budget.
Yes, correct.
So we can go ahead with it this year.
Correct.
If the plan is to go ahead with it this year.
That was the recommendation that staff have made to council. It is in your development charges study because a portion of that study is growth eligible. And so it's a contribution of funding sources to offset the $104,000 spend.
Now, Councillor McCreary has stated that she's not against going ahead with the design for the double ice pad, but she wants the leisure study done. Councillor Rolleman talked about when we do the design, he wants it roughed in for the pool. So why can't we do both in this year and do those designs? Councillor, did I say McCreary first and then Austin? Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I've been waiting.
Go ahead, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The thing is that if had we from the beginning expressed this path, this is the way council wants to move forward with it, I think it would have been just fine. If we would have moved forward and said, before we get this ICE needs assessment report done, before we spend the money, we want to encompass it into a leisure plan. We want to move forward with it as a package, maybe design. That's forethought. We're looking at this as afterthought now. And I don't agree that we're going, we're ramming this through. We're not doing that at all. All we're doing is putting in place a design which we approved, and we have been working on this since July last year, and we've had our path of how we were going to do it. We made this as a council decision how we were going to do it. Now I would need the dollar figure of what we spent for this ICE needs assessment, but to me, we've just thrown that money in the garbage, because now what Councilor Rowland is saying is now we want to scrap that, and we want to put all 3 facilities into a new plan and reconfigure and rejig the whole thing. I don't think that's what we should be doing. I mean, if this is what council's wish is, it's fine. I just think it's in a bad decision making of not doing this right from the beginning. If we would have said right from the beginning that we want to proceed cautiously, we want to encompass everything so that we're all inclusive, and did the leisure study, did the ICE needs, did the pool study, did the trail study, did everything together, then I would say I agree with you 100%. But how can you take down all the ICE users and everything down one path and say, yeah, this is what we're going to do? We decided this as a council. Oh, wait a second. No, we're not going to do that, because now we just changed our mind, or we want to change our mind that we need to look at broadband now. Let's just we just pick up broadband. We're going to throw that into the pot. Now we're going to throw a pool into the pot. Then we're going to throw something else into the pot. And next thing you know, that's just a stall tactic where we don't get the second pad put in. And the longer we delay it and the ACC facility goes down, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be paying a lot more money. So had we started from the beginning with this decision of what the 3 councillors are talking about tonight, I would have had no problem with it. But I have a problem now, because now everything we've decided for the last 8 months, we're throwing it in the trash can, and we're going to start all over again. That's where I have the problem with. I don't have a problem with what council believes we should do and move cautiously. I've got no problem with moving cautiously if we think that we're not moving cautiously, but we've taken a sharp turn and gone down another different road now, and I'm not really sure how I feel about this as an afterthought. That's my point.
And if I may, Councillor Austin, I tend to agree with you in that we have the documented information from hired consultants. We don't have anything about the others yet. And this council was the one that delayed the leisure study. This council voted on and delayed it. But they didn't vote to delay the study done for the 20 of the pad, or actually the arena studies. They didn't delay that. They delayed this leisure plan. And so we're following the process basically set up by this council. Councilor McCreary.
First of all, to address Councillor Ostner's concern about us throwing away money on the ICE study, we should recall that the ICE study was paid for with a grant. So the ICE study, in fact, was free. I am simply asking that the arena design be deferred until 2022. I'm not asking to scrap anything at all. I'm not asking to throw anything in the garbage. I'm simply asking that the study be deferred. And I do believe that as council, we can always revise our decisions, our approach to things to make better decisions and to get a better result. And regarding broadband, it is hardly a tactic to defer things away from the ICE needs. Broadband and lack of it is a very serious problem for a lot of Canadians and affects a lot of people in this township. And that really became apparent with the pandemic. And I look forward to CAO McNeely's report on what we can do with broadband. And we simply can't wait any longer. We need to do something. It might not be a lot, but we need to do something to help people in the township who don't have that service, which is now really an essential service.
If I may, it's not ice pad, broadband, pool, roads. We're a council dealing with the whole municipality that has a whole range of issues that we must deal with, all of those issues. And if both of these things are already planned for 2021, I can't see why we wouldn't go ahead. And as Councillor Rowland stated, there's nothing to problem with adding in, Councillor Rosser, there's nothing wrong with adding in a rough area where the pool's gonna go, so that they know that we pre-planned. This is what planning is. And we're not asked to construct. We're saying based upon, we have the funds. Grant money is not free. Your taxes already paid for it. Your provincial and federal taxes already paid for it. It already came from the taxpayer. And it's nice that North Dumfries Township received some of their tax money back to allow for the grant to go forward for the study. I'm still in favor of leaving both of them in. It does not defer from anything else. We're not ready to move forward with broadband, but there's some phenomenal ideas out there that I'm going to flag to the CAOs based upon what I learned at Roma. And one of them is like putting up the old TV tower antennas and using silos with antennas on it to feed to the signals on. And there's companies doing this with municipalities, and it's falling under the federal grant money. So we're hoping to move forward with that. We're not saying do one or the other or anything. We're saying right now our staff have laid out a plan that we can do right now. Doing both those things right now, the design and the study in this year is already planned for in our budget, is already laid out. It doesn't deter from anything. It doesn't hurt to have the design done now. It doesn't, and it doesn't hurt to have the leisure study done now. One does not defeat the other. They work in conjunction with each other. I believe Councillor Gillespie and then Councillor Osner.
Yes, I think the reason that we deferred the leisure study when we did was because we were waiting for a new leisure director to help us with the study. And now I assume we have that. So that's why we could go ahead with that. I don't think there was any other reason why we delayed that study. So
I'm not sure why we delayed it. Councillor Osner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Also, just wanted to keep in mind that when the NDCC was built, it was built in such a way that we could add a twin pad, and the space was designed to have the twin pad there. That in no way should affect where a pool goes or where the township hall goes. If township hall and the pool want to be incorporated into a design, then that's what we should have done. And I still think that things can get designed, things can get built. We just have to remember that there is specific dimensions, specific builds into the NDCC for a twin pad to go where the twin pad's always been designed. And I don't think that interferes with any other plans or future bills that we may do at the NDCC. And you know, I think that it shouldn't be tied in. You know, shouldn't be tied in with any other projects. And the provincial grant that was given to do this ICE needs assessment could have been used for something else. It could have been applied to something else. So it wasn't free money. It's still taxpayers' money. There's no such thing as free money. And so that money could have gone somewhere else. Broadband is a separate issue. Broadband needs to be looked at across the whole township, not just in one area. You know, we were the ones that voted in and helped Neil in Ward 4 to get the broadband out there, and we were happy to help because the opportunity presents itself at that time. And there will be a time for certain projects for the opportunity to come to it. It's just right now, this is the opportunity that council decided to create. And I'm not saying to anybody that they can't change their decision or change their mind. I understand that. But this is something that we're not saying we're going to build it now. We're saying that we want to get the design and start on the design on it and see where it takes us. And you know, the leisure study is long overdue as well. I mean, there's a lot of things that have been left on, you know, passed down because we never had the finances to do it.
So did anyone want to make a motion or state anything further? Councilor Rowland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I guess looking at the motions that were pre-circulated, I'm just wondering how would we reflect the concern that was raised about the leisure studies master plan being completed or going forward before we start drawings? Which resolution would that affect? It would affect the budget one, or would it affect the 10-year capital plan resolution?
Actually, CEO McNeely.
So Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Roloman, both the design for the twinning at the NDCC and the leisure services master plan are shown draft in the 2021 capital budget. If council does not want one or both of those studies to proceed in 21, then you would by resolution vote and move one or both of those projects out of the 21 capital. If that motion is put forward, I would ask a second part of that motion to describe when you want it put into the budget. And I'll use an example. If you wish to take the design for the NDCC and move it from 21 to 22, it takes it out of this year's budget, obviously, and it would then trigger an amendment to the 10-year forecast and plug it in for that year. Okay, so if council does not want one or both of those studies to start in calendar year 21, then you would take it out of the 21 capital budget and then identify when you see it in the 10-year forecast.
May I ask a question, Councillor Osner, first to Ms. Stedall?
Yes.
If we move it to 2022, then that's putting a heavier tax load on 2022. Is that not correct? Because we already have budget for 2021 set. And with the way it is right now, it is a 0% budget. But if we move the 300 and some odd into 2022, that'll create a greater tax increase for 2022.
So the leisure services, you're talking the twin pad design. So the twin pad design, the 375,000. I believe CEO McNeely, you can help me that's all.
So it would not affect. It does not affect the capital budget levy in 21 or 22. The project is funded out of reserves with a $50,000 contribution from the CCG. So regardless of when you put it into the budget or the forecast period, it has no effect on the levy because it's self-funded within the budget.
Okay, thank you. So council, at this time, someone can make a motion. It would require a seconder. And please remember, one thing does not eliminate another. We're, as a township council, as a township, we're more than just one item. And this is one item that we have to deal with, along with, as you can see, 11, 12 pages of items that we will still be going forward with. See, Ms. Dettel, you want to speak? Go ahead.
Yes, sorry. It's probably, if you want to deal with this right now and pass and have one motion that amends it'll amend the 2021 budget, and it'll amend the capital budget. And then when we get to the other resolution, when we finish the review, that is a separate resolution.
Correct. Correct. So we're making changes, but first we have to decide if we're going to make that change. Correct?
Right. So the resolution that it sounds as if is being proposed.
I'm not sure yet. Do I have someone who would like to propose a resolution? Councilor Rollerman.
Madam Mayor, I think we should make a motion that the design for the second pad at the NDCC not proceed until after we have received the Leisure Services Master Plan.
So you're saying you're going to move it out 3 years?
The CEO said that it would take 1 year for that plan.
Or is it just 1 year, CEO McNeely? So you're saying, so we'd be 2023 for it? That's what you're saying?
2022. 2022.
CEO McNeely, what would that move that out to?
So Madam Mayor, if council moves forward with the Leisure Services Master Plan in the next few months, we would have it finished in the early part of 22. And then I believe, I don't want to put words in Councillor Rollerman's mouth, but I believe if I'm interpreting correctly, based on the conclusions and recommendations coming out of the broad perspective study, he's saying that would then inform the design aspect for the twin pad, which he would see, if the sequencing is there, starting in 22. So the motion would be that the 2021 capital budget be amended by the removal of the design of the twin pad project and be relocated to the year 2022 as part of the 10-year forecast.
Yes, so moved.
Did we catch all that? Everything in it? So design would be 2021. We're moving, no, not design, leisure study 2021 and design 2022. Do you have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councilor McCreary seconds it. Recorded vote, please. Point of order. May the mayor ask for a recorded vote?
Yes,
Does
you
it
may.
have to come from the floor? Ms. Sage, can the mayor ask for a recorded vote, or does it have to come from the floor?
Yes, you can ask for a recorded vote.
Thank you.
Okay, I was going to say if it needs to come from the floor, then I'll motion that.
Thank you, Councilor Osner. So Ms. Sage, do you have the motion?
Yes, so moved by Councillor Rollerman, seconded by Councillor McCreary, that the 2021 capital budget be amended by the removal of the design of the twin pad project and be reallocated to the year 2022 as part of the 10-year forecast. I captured that correctly. Mayor Foxton, your vote on that?
No.
Councillor Rollerman?
Yes.
Councillor Osner?
No,
Sorry, that was no?
that was a no.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
Okay, that carries.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Dettel.
Okay. So I'm at the Roseville Community Center and under facilities. There's just one item there with, you'll see through the rest of the facilities. There are one line, we did the study a couple of years ago that highlighted a number of various upgrades that are needed to each of our facilities. And so you'll see there's various building upgrades that are put on each of the different lines for all of the buildings. So Roseville, and then we've got Victoria Park, NDCC, ACC. We also have Centennial Park, we have the gazebo, some roofing, some Cowan Park. We have a large project there actually with the gray water pump construction and design that's in. Smith Park Pavilion, various upgrades, as well as the asphalt parking lot and driveway. The renovations of the washrooms at all of the parks, including Victoria, Smith, and Cowan. Library, and the pool is down further. We can move it up closer to the NDCC. It was a new line, that's why it's added down at the bottom. Victoria Park, we have some work that's being done, and this one in particular has got some donations by the Air Minor Vics. The Air Ice House, the renovation is shown as a reserve each year. And then we have on these lines showing the repayment of debt, both the current debt, and you'll see over time as some of the projects come in and are completed that the debt is increased. It's a recalculation, and that's what the red is down here at the bottom. And you'll see the year that it's been added in. So I believe there was a question.
Just a comment that the debt for the, we're assuming for the arena is 3.3 million, almost 3.4. The debt for the pool is 12.6 million, 12.7 million. Just wanted to make that comment. Okay, any comments? Councilor Gillespie.
Yes, one question. We still have the township office project in 2021. And I just wondered, I'd like to move that out another year too. I don't know what was decided on that.
We have, we've deferred the township office for over 8 years now. And we're getting really tight for staff. So eventually we're gonna have to bite the bullet and do something with the township office.
Well, I'm thinking it could likely go at a refurbished ACC in that area. You could put some offices in there.
Why don't we wait till the report from CO McNeely, who is bringing it forward? When, CO McNeely? Where did you go? And then Councilor Woloman's next after. Did we lose CO McNeely?
Sure.
Well, Madam Mayor, we did have a workshop in August. There were some takeaways from that roundtable discussion. Senior management met this morning to recalibrate some of the discussions coming out of August, what we've learned coming out of COVID, and how it may change business practices going forward. And so I'm now working on the next report, and given the nature of that project and the complexities associated with it, I'd probably be asking that it be dealt with at a special meeting of council, so the appropriate time allowance could be set aside to have a meaningful discussion amongst all members of council on the merits of the project and what elements may or may not be incorporated into the project if it was to go forward.
Okay, so that doesn't help me. Councilor Woloman. That was a little vague.
Madam Mayor, so I just wanted to comment on what you just said about the debt for the pool. The pool debt is shown as $12 million in our budget, and the twinning of the pad is shown as $3 million. But the twin pad also includes $7 million in grants and $2 million in fundraising. If we applied a similar model to the pool would have $7 million in grants and $2 million in fundraising, and then the debt would be $3 million. So it's the exact same number. So that's why we have to be careful when we throw numbers around, because it's in the pool's in here at $15 million with no grants whatsoever, no fundraising whatsoever. And the NDCC twin is put in at $13 million, when in reality, it could be the same price as a pool. We don't know for sure. These are just speculative numbers. And it's showing a potential grant of 7 million and potential fundraising of 2 million. So to be fair, if we use the same formula for the pool would come in, or could potentially come in, at the exact same numbers as Twin Pad. I just wanted to raise that.
No. Yeah, you need to look at the price above of the pool. It's 17,700,000. That was the debt load down before. If you took 9 off of 17, it's not going to give you 3. They're saying the pool is 17,700,000. Councilman, CO McNeely.
So, Madam Mayor, Councillor Rowland is correct. We have not done an analysis of funding strategies for the pool. What we did do is we incorporated the pool into the development charge calculation as part of the 2020 update the council approved. So the item was discussed at the August meeting. We had just embarked upon the development charges update at that point in time. We had discussions with the consultant about eligibility for development charges and how we would prorate that between existing community benefit and growth related. A formula was calculated. So we do have a funding stream right now that shows development charges. But beyond that, no further analysis has occurred. And Councillor Rowland, you are correct. It might be eligible for future senior level government grant programs that are available out that time period. It may, I would hope, there would be a fundraising component to assist in defraying either the equipment that goes into the pool and or the bricks and mortar campaign for the pool, or a combination thereof. We have not done that discussion or analysis.
CO McNeely, there's a $5 million in there. I thought that looked at grants. Is that supposed to be up a line to development charges? That 5 million?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so that 5 million is development.
It's on the wrong line.
Yeah, it's on the wrong line. Okay,
there
we'll
is
get
a
that
development
corrected.
charges component. We have not populated other sources of revenue.
Okay, thank you. I believe Councillor McCreary and then Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a comment about the financing of the pool, because we've got it in our development charges study with 5.4 million coming in as development charges. The arena is not eligible for development charges, so that additional funding source, whenever I look at it, the additional funding source for the pool puts it basically on the equivalent with the twin pad. So it is not financially insurmountable.
I have a question here. Now, we've got development charges for the 622. That's not necessarily for the arena, though. Okay, that's where I'm reading that wrong, correct? The 622 is for other things. Okay, all right. Because I did see the $5 million for grants for the pool, but that's a mistake. It goes up to development charges. But getting back to what the township office, where are we at with that? So CA McNeely, would it be okay to move that out a year?
Madam Mayor, I would ask that council leave the design funds in the 21 budget as presently shown. Allow me to bring forward the follow-up report coming from the August workshop. And at that point in time, council could decide whether or not to move ahead. There will be, as part of that presentation, an alternative building strategy that may accelerate timelines, but also realize some potential cost containment measures for the corporation. But you need to look at it in the context of the full report. So if you protect the funds, they're not part of the tax levy, they're coming out of reserves. We would not move forward until that report is presented, council digests what's in it, and then council provides direction, whatever that may be. If council, after that discussion, chooses not to move forward with the project this year, the funds just stay in the reserve account and would be available for either the future for this project and or other capital projects that draw upon that reserve account in the broader facility strategy.
Councillor Gillespie, is that okay?
Yes,
All right.
that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, let's move forward, Ms. Dettle.
Okay, so on to parks and trails. And it again is just, it's one page. There's a number of projects that are scattered throughout, and but we have some projects that are ongoing on a regular basis, like the play structure replacement, and you'll see some of these numbers. We have parks and parkettes. Some of these different items are related to development charges. They are with some of the new developments, the improvement of some of the parks or development of some of the parks. We have some other items in here, though. We have potential three-lit tennis court facility. And we have 3 items that are here that have been carried forward from last year that are dependent on other funding, which we have not received in the final word on it yet. So they're still left in, and that is the tennis courts, the washrooms, and the ball diamond lighting. So we've got basketball courts, off-leash parks, trail design, a replacement of parks furniture. And going down a little further, we've got a trail development. This was changed and added in last year. We've got some Watson Pond, the Centennial Park pedestrian replacement, as well as the Watson Pond fountain, off-road trails. And in this particular item, we don't have, we have contributions to reserves in the long term in the future. But other than that, that's all we have for parks. And you'll see that the taxation year over year, we actually we have a couple of bumps. We have some extra money that's coming out. We have to, so there needs, this whole line of taxation in the parks needs to be cleared up as to what we are actually going to be doing in the future. So the net result for this year for total parks facilities is a net effect of 0 on the taxation. Everything has been funded this year from something. So that's it for the detail. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on the reserve balance continuity estimates and the debt principal, because again, so with some of the discussion that has just happened, some of this is a fluid document. It changes, and with some of the changes, it will change what we have in some of the reserve balances, and it'll also change the bottom part here, which is the debt principal. I'm not going to go through each of these. If there's any questions, councillors can raise them, but I will show you at the bottom here, debt principal balances based on the projects as they were identified when the project was put together before the start of the meeting. At the bottom, you'll see I've added in just a note onto this part of the spreadsheet, the annual debt repayment. That's the 2019 that comes out of the financial information return that was filed for 2019. So there are updates to this number. They are, as we get more revenue, as I said, this number will change. Moving on to page 14. These reserves back here on page 13, that's an estimate as to where the reserves are going to go based on what the projects are. This page back here on page 14 and page 15 are the list of other reserves that we currently have and where we've gone from 2015 up to this point. And you'll see our total reserves. There we've got the non-obligatory reserves, and we have our trusts and reserves and deferred, but the total has actually grown, and we are now at 11.2 as an estimate to the end of 2020. And this is, again, is pending the final year end. So if there's no other questions, major questions, I'm going to stop screen sharing. Is there anything?
Ms. Dittle, so the trustee reserves are actually money we keep in trust that we have to give back.
Correct.
What are our township reserves? Just the township reserves that is money available to the township?
Non-obligatory reserves, I think, is what you're referring to.
Okay, so it's 8 million.
Yes.
8 million 6. Thank you.
As we've just talked about, going back to this, that's what the reserves are are being built towards. They're actually going to increase further to be used against all of the different projects that we just talked about.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Okay, we can start with the motion. I believe the next motion is okay, even with the changes. Ms. Sage, would you think so as well?
So the next, yes, the motion that we have shouldn't change based on what was presented tonight, what has already been approved.
Okay, Ms. Dettel, will you look at the next motion and see if that one is also okay?
Okay,
Because
so
we did not change the taxes.
yes, correct. So both motions are still relevant. They can both be passed. The changes that were made in the motion that was passed earlier, the net result will be no change to taxation. So I don't know if you can see that. Council were circulated a copy. I'm sorry, I can't get that to be large enough. The tax rate sheet that was circulated previously to this, there's still a 0% increase in the tax rate that is expected for the general levy if the tax rate, if the budget is approved tonight.
Okay, Councillor McCreary and then CEO McNeely.
I'm not sure what motion we're putting on the floor right now, but the motion that talks about the next meeting date for discussing the capital budget or the 10-year capital forecast in August 2021.
That's the next motion, actually.
I can't attend that meeting. I will be away, so I was just wondering if we could pick another date.
Can we word it this way, and that council approves that a special budget of council be scheduled
In late August?
in late August or in August?
Here I'm gone from the 6th to the 18th.
So
So
we'll
yeah,
have
late August, end of August, I
Yeah,
could attend.
late August. So make that amendment, please, Ms. Sage. And then maybe send out a calendar invite for that as soon as possible with the date that councilors, please look at your schedule for the last week of August, I believe we'll be looking at. You're back to the 16th, Ms. Councilor McCreary?
I'm back on the 18th.
18th, okay. Okay, so that's actually, we've got a week and a half to play with in there. So councilors, if any of you have any holidays slated for that time, please let us know in advance so we can book this meeting in, and the meeting will be sent out hopefully soon. What were you looking at there, Ms. Sage? Were you looking for, the 10th was a Tuesday. Were you looking for a Tuesday?
So Madam Mayor, if I may, what we were trying to do is we actually dovetailed the meetings back to back with the scheduled meeting for the month of August. So council already had a regular meeting on the Monday, and we were going to have the workshop the next day. We'll provide some dates toward the end of August, but we'll also give you the context of AMO, because it's also that time period, and you obviously don't want to trespass the workshop with the AMO conference.
And it's usually 16th, 17th, 18th. So
I'm not too sure when. It's a little bit later this year, but we'll give you those dates.
Okay, perfect. All right, so with that amendment, yes, CEO
So,
McNeely?
Mayor, if I could speak to the resolution.
Yes.
You do not need to amend the resolutions to account for the earlier decision of council as it related to the delivery timetable of the design work for the twin pad, because we'll have amended both the 21 and the forecast.
But that's in the second paragraph, and that staff evaluate the roundtable discussions identified by council to adjust the deliverable timelines to amend the project identified in the 2021 to 2030 10-year capital forecast. So that's covered in that second paragraph.
We will have already accounted for that. And so when you're voting today, you're dealing with the budget as amended by that earlier resolution.
Right, and that's read in this card. So go ahead, Ms. Sage.
So moved by Councillor Rowland, seconded by Councillor McCreary, that report FIN number 02-2021 regarding the 2021 to 2030 10-year capital forecast be received, and that council adopt in principle the projects in the 10-year capital forecast to inform the Township of North Dumfries' future financial capital budgets and ongoing planning and financial analysis, and that staff evaluate the roundtable discussions identified by council to adjust deliverable timelines to amend the projects identified in the 2021 to 2030 10-year capital forecast, and to further develop funding strategies based on the listing of projects, and that council approve that a special budget of council be scheduled in late August 2021 at 6 p.m. for council to review the updated 10-year capital forecast to inform the 2022 capital budget. So Mayor Foxton, your vote on that?
Yes.
Councillor Rolleman?
Yes.
Councillor Rossner?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
Okay, that carries.
Thank you. I believe the next one is fine as well. Ms. Sage?
Yep, moved by Councillor Oster and seconded by Councillor Rolleman, that the bylaw to approve the Township of North Dumfries 2021 budget with a tax levy of $6,157,670 be presented for first, second, and third reading, and that the 2021 municipal tax rates be approved following the Region of Waterloo Council adoption of the 2021 tax rate policy. Mayor Foxton, you vote on that?
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Rolleman?
Yes.
Councillor Oster?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
Okay, that carries.
Next.
Moved by Councillor Gillespie, seconded by Councillor Rolleman, that the following bylaws be taken as read a first and second time. Bylaw number 3222-21 being a bylaw to adopt the 2021 budget for the Township of North Dumfries. Mayor Foxton?
Yes.
Councillor Rolleman?
Yes.
Councillor Oster?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
Okay, that carries.
And keep going.
Moved by Councillor Oster, seconded by Councillor Gillespie, that the following bylaws be taken as read a third time and finally passed. Bylaw number 3222-21 being a bylaw to adopt the 2021 budget for the Township of North Dumfries. Mayor Foxton?
Yes.
Councillor Rolleman?
Yes.
Councillor Oster?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
Okay, that carries.
Thank you. Couple more.
Moved by Councillor Oster and seconded by Councillor McCreary, that bylaw number 3221-21 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on January 28th, 2021 be read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, signed, and sealed by the mayor and clerk. Mayor Foxton, vote on
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Councillor Rolleman?
Yes.
Councillor Oster?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
Yeah, that carries.
Miss Dettle's got this huge smile on her face. And finally,
Moved by Councillor McCreary and seconded by Councillor Gillespie, that whereas business before the special budget council meeting has been completed at 8:41 p.m. and be it resolved that this meeting adjourns and meets again on Monday, February 8th at 6 p.m. for committee of the whole. Mayor Foxton, your vote on that?
yes.
Councillor Rolleman?
I guess so.
Councillor Alston?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
Okay, that carries and we are adjourned.
Ladies and gentlemen, you did a good job. It's supposed to be debate. It's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to have different